Welcome to Blue Cabin's Creative Life Story Work podcast, where we explore how a creative approach to life story work can help children and young people who have been in care make sense of their past and build a brighter future. My name's Dawn Williams. I'm Director of Blue Cabin, who are the organisation leading creative life story work. If you heard our first podcast, you will have heard about the beginnings, the stories. You will have heard from the main players, Richard Rose, Tony Joyce, Jenny Young, and some of our associate artists. If you missed that podcast, how could you miss it? You can find it again on our website at www.wearebluecabin.com/CLSW podcast. For today's podcast, I'm absolutely delighted to have back with us in the studio Jenny Young and also two of our associate artists who are facilitating creative activities for care experienced children and young people in the North East. Elena Miller from Starbright Arts. Good morning, Elena.
Good morning.
And Nick Golightly. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
And welcome to Jenny Young, Director of Blue Cabin.
Morning.
You're all very welcome this morning into the studio, and I'd really like us this morning to tell the story of what it's like to be an artist delivering some of the creative life story work activities for children and young people. But before we do that, I wonder if, Jenny, you would like to give us a quick overview of creative life story work and the work that Blue Cabin's been doing.
Yes, that would be a pleasure. So in terms of creative life story work, the model was devised as part of a programme that began in 2018 as a result of some Department for Education funding that was accessed by South Tyneside Council and their partners in practice work. And a key person involved in this entire story is someone called Tony Joyce. He featured as part of our last podcast, and he approached Blue Cabin at the time and said, we would love to do some work with you. There's some really important needs that need to be addressed in South Tyneside Council, and one of those was around their life story work. And so back in 2018, the conversations began with South Tyneside Council about their life story work approach. And at that time, we also had a hunch that because all of our work is focused on care experienced children and young people, we wondered as a company whether there was a role for us to play in supporting local authorities to reimagine life story work. Now, all of our activities are artist-led by wonderful people like Elena and Nick. And so our hunch was around, is there a role that an artist could play in supporting life story work in any way? And so back in 2018, we had those conversations initially with South Tyneside Council, but at that time, we certainly weren't an expert in life story work at all. We were very interested, but we needed somebody who really understood it and was an expert so we could work alongside them. And we managed to find the amazing Richard Rose, and his therapeutic life story work model has been developed, and he delivers it all over the world, and it's called the therapeutic life story work approach. So the bringing together really of South Tyneside Council, Blue Cabin and Richard was the start of the conversation around reimagining a therapeutic life story work model. And then we felt it really important to reach out to artists that we already worked with, but also artists that we were known to us and who came with a really, really fantastic a reputation in terms of their work. And we started a conversation at that time with 5 associate artists. So there's Elena, Nick, Paddy, who was in our last podcast, Michelle Wood, and also Curious Monkey, about whether they'd like to be involved in this fantastic journey with us.
Thank you, Jenny. So let's hear from our associate artists who are with us this morning. So Elena and Nick, maybe it's Elena first. Before you start talking about creative life story work, would you like to give us a bit of a pen portrait of what the work is that you do? What would a usual day, if there is one, as Elena from Starbright Arts, what would a usual day look, sound and feel like?
So yes, no one day is the same in my little world here. But I have lots of many different hats. Alongside Starbright Arts, who does creative facilitation of various types of art forms, I'm also a clown doctor working on the children's wards, and I also work for Seven Stories, the National Centre for Children's Books, facilitating story events and creative writing and sensory story development as well. I've had a go at everything and anything in terms of art, and I love learning new skills. And yeah, it's been such an amazing journey to kind of try and squeeze everything into the All About Me sessions, like drawing in lots of different elements into the sessions has been really wonderful. But yeah, no one day is the same, but that makes life very exciting for me.
Wow, thank you, Elena. And Nick, the same question. Tell us a bit about Nick Golightly, the artist.
So I am a graphic designer and visual artist. I have quite a strong thread of participatory work through my practice, and I have done since I started as a visual artist many moons ago. And it's very much about sort of bringing my practice as a graphic designer to sort of the setting with participants, and using that as a sort of overarching tool to bring play and fun and different outcomes that people that I work with can make. Collaboration is at the core of my practice. I'm not very good at working on my own. So within this setting and working with people is really quite core to the way that I produce work.
That's lovely. Thank you, both of you. We're going to hear from Tony Joyce from South Tyneside Council, who described the difference between therapy, between life story work and the creative life story work that you've been involved in. So if we hear from him first, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about that as well.
I think the main difference between life story work and creative life story work is nothing more than in its approach. Life story work can sometimes be seen as something that is a theme, or is a task, or is a specific piece of work. What creative life story work does, it brings in the notion of play, it brings in the notion of using arts and crafts, and it just makes it more fun, and therefore makes it more enjoyable for children and young people. It can be done at their pace. It brings out their kind of talents and interests. It raises their self-esteem, and that obviously raises their confidence within that.
So, Tony's explanation of creative life story work. So, Elena, can you cast your mind back to 2018 when you were first beginning to devise those sessions? Where did you start? How did you begin to start framing those sessions that you'd be delivering to children?
Yeah, so like Tony said, I think play was the most important thing. I think within all of the things that I deliver, a bit like Nick in terms of the participation elements, there's so much play involved. And I think for adults, it can be quite hard for them to get back to that playful zone. Obviously, children, it's quite a natural thing, but you want to take the carer on that journey to be able to support the young person as well. And so there was, I started off with the kind of ideas of boxes and opening boxes and exploring boxes together. And that eventually they would collectively make a box with lots of special things, which became the I Treasure box. But yeah, I was so excited to deliver the first session, which was a game of opening boxes, and they didn't know what was inside, and they got to explore them with their carer, and yeah, just their faces of just the pure joy and excitement. And that was like a really brilliant moment for me to kind of watch how the child and carer interacted as well, just so that it meant that you could tailor the sessions a little bit as well to the needs of the children and the carers. So yeah, being playful has been a massive part. And yeah, there's been such an amazing journey. And like every time I've delivered it, the sessions have changed that little bit, but it is about meeting the children and carers and making it fit for them.
And Nick, can you give us a flavour of some of the All About Me sessions that you've been delivering to children and their carers?
So the sessions that we've run have all been linked to 6 sort of key themes, linked to the young people and their life story. So around those themes, sort of talking about emotions and feelings, who they are, who they live with, what their identity is. And so around those ideas, I began making and designing sort of books and different activities such as doodle jams, which kind of enticed information out of the young people without them necessarily knowing that they were doing their life story work, that it was about them relaxed and enjoying different activities which were very much about mark making, about visualising different things, about making maps that were enjoyable activities. I mean, in some of the sessions we threw paper aeroplanes into a bin and talked about things whilst doing that. So it's sort of activities that kind of relax and are quite therapeutic in themselves, regardless of the sort of subject area that we're talking about almost, but actually, like myself, just opening up the opportunity to have fun and engage with others in the room who are in similar situations, be with the person who cares for you, and also being with professionals in the room, so it's a safe environment, but also that you're it's a talking point, it's an activity to engage with together. I think as a parent you sort of realise that you don't always have that time to do that. As a parent myself with our children, especially through lockdown, having that focused time that's quite relaxed and positive. And there isn't it's not schoolwork, it's not, you must complete this outcome, but there's a structure around it, and there's something to do and engage with, but actually the outcome is almost secondary, but still crucial to what we're doing. So, to make a concertina folded book, which is a timeline which starts with when they were born and ends with today, but that plots that in a creative way, and through doodling and using different sort of techniques, actually you end up with something that's beautiful at the end of it, which is a memory of that moment, but actually the process of being involved in that space with the people you're surrounded with is as much kind of the important gem that happens, I suppose.
So a very safe space for some rich conversations happening whilst
Certainly.
making an object. Both Nick and Elena mentioned other adults in the room. Jenny, I wondered if you wanted to say something about the roles of the pastoral support worker who's also in the space with the artists when the sessions are taking place.
Yeah, we in the devising of or reimagining of Richard's therapeutic life story work model. Just briefly to describe Richard's model, there is it's a triangle. If you imagine a triangle, and at the base of the triangle is all about me. And in Richard's original model, all about me was direct work. So working through the 6 themes that our associate artists still work through. But with Richard's model, that was on a one-to-one basis, for example, between a foster carer and a child, or a social worker and a child. And that takes place over about a 6-week period. So that's at the base of the triangle. And then the next tier is more about me, and that's for children who are a little bit more perhaps stuck in terms of the now and want to explore that a little bit more in a more in-depth way. That's facilitated specifically by a therapeutic life story worker with the child and a carer in a home environment. And that takes a longer time than all about me because of the content of those sessions is more in depth. And then at the top of the triangle is therapeutic life story work, and that's a 9 to 12 months process, facilitated again by a therapeutic life story worker with a foster carer and the child, and is for those children and young people who have perhaps faced quite significant trauma or abuse, that have a lot of questions about why they are where they are at, who is in their life, and that a lot of that past trauma and abuse perhaps is also impacting upon the now for them. So that's why that top tier takes a lot longer. And in reimagining all about me at the base of therapeutic life story work, we wondered if actually could this be done in a group setting? A very small group setting nevertheless, but a group setting whereby you're bringing together a small group of similar age children to have the conversations with their trusted adult in a group setting. And so the trusted adult in a lot of instances is the foster carer, because what we're wanting to support with creative experiences for All About Me is the opportunity for that child and the adult to explore those themes in the session in a really safe way, to be on equal footing with regards to the conversation, but also to enable the beginnings of that conversation in the room so that that conversation can happen between sessions, can happen over the dinner table, can happen in a car journey, because what we're wanting to make sure with this model is that the conversation is never off the table, and that the trusted adult feels supported and confident to facilitate those conversations in any space. So it was really key for us that in the development of a group setting creative experience for All About Me, that the key trusted adult was alongside the child. So in a room you have 6 children and their 6 trusted adults working together. The artist is one of the facilitators, and then alongside the artist we identified with Richard and also with South Tyneside Council and the artist a real important role that we call a pastoral support worker or a therapeutic social worker. And what's important about that role is they lead on the safeguarding of the space. They lead on observing the sessions in terms of what are the pastoral needs of the children and the adults, and also work alongside the artists to be a co-facilitator, a second pair of eyes to notice things that are taking place, notice conversations, get alongside a child and a foster carer, for example, if something is a bit tricky, but also take part in the creative activity as well and be on an equal footing alongside everybody in the space, because seeing everybody play and seeing everybody be creative is actually a very, very important grounding of our sessions. So you usually have up to 6 adults, 6 children, and then the artist and pastoral support worker working really closely together. And I think that role alongside the artist is so crucial to how successful the initial work was in South Tyneside, because it's recognising the importance of somebody being in that space to think of things from that pastoral point of view. If a child, for example, needs a bit of a break, the artist isn't necessarily having to go with that child when they leave the space. Actually, the pastoral support worker can do that and check in with the child if they need to just have a bit of time out. And it means that there's somebody always in that space leading on the activity as well. So the configuration of who is in the room is being given a lot of thought, and it's still emerging, and it's still something that we think and talk about regularly. But yeah, that's how it looks, and that's how the model works at the moment.
So a huge amount of thought and care going into the activities that those children and young people and the adults in their lives are taking part in. As associate artists, Nick and Elena, what support have you been given as artists? Because I'm imagining there'll be some quite difficult conversations that you're hearing in those rooms as well. And so from an artist's perspective, what needs to be in place to support you to do this really quite tricky and challenging work?
I think what was brilliant on the first few rounds of the sessions that we did was that we supported each other, and we kind of shared our thoughts and feelings and kind of wrote those down, and we were able to look at each other's kind of notes after, reflections and things, which was really useful to kind of inform our own practice. But what's really great about this next lot of sessions that we're running is that we're going to be having supervision. So Matt, who is a trained CBT therapist, I think I'm right in saying, is going to be delivering groups of supervision. So, for example, that's me and Michelle, who will be doing sessions together and kind of looking at goals and things. Because there are challenging conversations, and sometimes you might find out some information about a young person that is really, really quite difficult to process, because it's nothing that you've ever experienced before. And so how can we best support the children if they are, coming out with these things? So I think having the support network there from a trained therapist for us is a really, really brilliant thing, and I hope that that might, go on in the future as well. I don't know if Nick's got anything more to say.
Yeah, so I'd certainly say that the support of our sort of fellow artists is like, to mirror what Elena said, has been crucial really, because we're all going through exactly the same experience. But the training that's been provided from Blue Cabin with regards sort of social pedagogy, we sat alongside foster carers and social workers in the training that Richard Rose led in South Tyneside. We kind of, we all had different experiences and an understanding of the children who we would be working with, but also the adults that surround them and the professionals that kind of create a map around those young people and support them. So I think what it's enabled, thinking back to 2018, thinking to now, I think what, in my mind, it's enabled me to understand not just the young person that we're working with, but also how they sit within, their care and support, and who enables them to be there in the room, but also who they go to talk to, and I think that gives us a good understanding of who we're working with and what system is in place to support those young people. I also think emotionally and personally, those reflection sessions and certainly the supervision that's going to be starting, we've had one session so far, I think that's crucial in order for us to process the information that we are, the young people we're working with. I mean, quite naturally, with 15 years experience as an artist, regardless of who I work with, there is always that time afterwards of reflection after a session, because it's a pressurized, there is something that you are trying to achieve within that session. You don't always know who you're going to be working with. We work with these young children and young people for 6 weeks. We start to understand who they are and what makes them tick, but also we're understanding about their journey to get into that point. And I think sometimes what they might tell us or what we might sort of hold is quite a big thing. And so I suppose that support that Blue Cabin's enabled around us as well is crucial, so that we don't feel that stress or pressure or holding has any effect that it shouldn't, I suppose.
Thank you. So a really clear and detailed map of the support and training that you as artists have been immersed in order to be able to deliver this work in a really safe way for both the children, their adults, and yourselves as well. I wondered, Elena and Nick, if you had anything to say about how this work transfers, or does it translate into other pieces of work that you're doing as freelance artists? What's the impact been on pieces of work that you're doing out with Blue Cabin?
I think the biggest learning process for me has been the kind of transference of moving stuff online. So the fact that the sessions are going to be being delivered online, we've done lots of other training alongside the kind of support and stuff to look at how you can deliver online. And so there's been lots of sessions with each other, sessions with other amazing facilitators who have shared their knowledge and skills with delivering online and using lots of different styles and techniques. So that's been a really big learning curve and has filtered out into lots of my other realms of work. Yeah.
Thank you. Nick?
I think for me, it's about sort of consolidating a lot of kind of my working practices that I've used over the years. And I think that focused time on one project, which has taken over, a couple of years so far and has a longevity, means that I think it's made me think about the way in which I use design as a tool for creative thinking, the way in which I utilise play, and not every moment in every session needs to be making. Not every moment in every session needs to be focused on a task. I think I've certainly learnt from my peers in terms of Elena, Paddy and Michelle, our conversations around how we engage young people and how we understand what's happening in a room. I think as an artist with this practice and my fellow artists, it's really interesting to sit and talk about how we approach things and how we plan things. And, oh, so you do that at that moment. Oh, so is that how you evaluate? And it's not necessarily at all our creative practices. In fact, that's sort of secondary. But that approach as a participatory artist and how we have a sort of a respect for each other's skill sets and how we approach working with young people. I think that's grounded me, along with learning about social pedagogy and that approach to sort of working. I think it's really sort of steadied me in my career. I know that sounds massive and I'm not on one, don't worry, but like in terms of approach, I think that's been really important. But I also want to say that sort of personally, I think it's been really important. You know, I'm an adoptive parent, talking about life story work, thinking about young people who are on a journey, thinking about life. I mean, it's massive, but also I think it's really important to reflect upon all the things that we're doing. And yeah, I think it's been a real sort of a journey, but it's been a really sort of, it's been gold. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm coming out with all the corny phrases now, but it's been like, it's been a real learning experience as a professional. And I don't think I necessarily expected that at the beginning when Jenny came to me and said, what do you think about this, basically? So I think that's really good to consider, I think, as a professional artist.
Creative Life Story Work will be continuing until 2022. So in my closing question to you, I'd like you to imagine that we are in 2022 and Creative Life Story Work has been the best it could possibly be. Think about, what are people saying about it? What are the conversations that you're hearing? And if you were to write a postcard back to yourself now, what would you write on that postcard? Jenny, from Blue Cabin's point of view, what would you write on that postcard from 2022?
Oh, goodness me. That's a really tough question. At the centre of all of this, I think, has always been providing a space for care experienced children and young people to have, I suppose, more agency over their life stories. And so I would hope that my postcard says something like, children and young people children and young people are demanding this model from their local authorities, or children and young people tell us that this is making a difference to them, and is enabling them to feel that they are more aware of their life stories, have more opportunities to have those conversations, have language to use whereby they can describe how they feel about those things, but also feel really able and empowered to ask questions if they don't know the answer to something, and they're in turn, their carers, their social workers also feel confident enough to sit alongside them and help them work through that and help them answer some of those questions that they might have. So I would hope that the postcard says that children and young people want more of this, and that's something we can help with.
Elena, what would your postcard say?
Something probably quite similar to Jenny's, just that that the young people and their important people in their lives have built those connections. Those building blocks are stronger. That they are able to share their thoughts and feelings and emotions around what has happened to them in their lives, and that they want more, and that it's really helped them, and that it's worked, and there should be more.
Thank you. And Nick?
I'm not going to end with some kind of corny phrase. I'm trying. I've listened to Jenny and Elena thinking, no, don't do it, Nicola. Don't do it.
That's why I went to you last, Nick.
All the disco classics are just running through my head, what I can say. I'm not entirely sure that I can encapsulate what I would put on a postcard, but I think there's something about that kind of, we're all human after all, aren't we? And I think it's something quite honest that needs to be remembered, that these are young people who have a life story, and we all have a life story, regardless what it looks like or how it works. And I think the positive of this is that we're telling those life stories, and that's what's got to be held close to our hearts, really, that whatever we do, that it's really good work and that it's important. And so, you know, the stresses and strains of us as artists putting together sessions, and I'm talking to myself now, this is my mantra, but, you know, and getting worried about online sessions, getting worried that we'll lose our internet connection, getting precious about what we look like on screen. Actually, what's really important is that focus, isn't it? And those young people, and we are human after all.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to Elena, Nick and Jenny for being in Blue Cabin's second Creative Life Story Work podcast this morning. Thank you for your insights and comments on the really important work that you're all involved in. Whether you're a foster carer, someone who has experience of the care system, or you work with children and young people, we hope this episode has given you an insight into how we could make life story work better for young people. We'd really love to hear your thoughts. You can tweet us on @WeAreBlueCabin, or if you're one of the 1,500 people taking part in our Creative Life Story Work learning programme, you can always get in touch through the online learning platform. If you'd like to listen to future episodes, remember to subscribe wherever it is you usually get your podcasts. Or you can listen on our website at www.wearebluecabin.com/CLSW podcast.
The Creative Life Story Work podcast is produced for Blue Cabin by Anya Media. Find out more at anya.media.